Happy Trooper here with another prop build. In this episode, we'll customize the Blastech DL-44 Heavy Blaster Pistol, the preferred weapon of smugglers and bounty hunters across the galaxy. This little pistol packs a heavy punch, and in the right hands, can be very deadly. Sorry about that. A list of all the materials that were used in this build can be found in the description section below this video.
For the blaster, I used Han Solo's costume accessory made by Rubies. At the time of this video, the cost of the blaster is $12 on Amazon.com. It doesn't look like much in its orange and white plastic mold, but with some paint and patience, you can transform it into a nice looking prop that can be used for display, cosplay, and in your Star Wars fan films. The first thing that I did was drill out the holes on the muzzle. I wrapped the blaster in a cloth towel and secured it in a vise. A 1/16 inch bit was used to drill the pilot holes, followed by a 3/32 inch bit to widen the holes. To pull the cover piece off of the muzzle, I drilled a hole in the center of the plastic and pried it off with a screwdriver. That piece was held together with light glue and is easy to remove once you have a little leverage. Next, I filled in all of the holes and gaps with Bondo filler. This stuff has a very strong smell. Be sure to use a respirator or have adequate ventilation. Mix a small amount with the hardener cream that comes with the filler. It does dry quickly. If it hardens, just mix another batch. Apply to all of the holes and seams that you do not want to be visible. To fill in fine lines, you can use squadron modeling putty applied with an artist's palette knife. To minimize filler overflow, use masking or painter's tape to seal off your work area. I sacrificed sound for looks and sealed the battery compartment in the handle with Bondo. After the filler had ample time to dry, I sanded it off with 220 grit sandpaper. To remove the filler from hard-to-reach areas, I used toothpicks, a jeweler's screwdriver, and sanding twigs. While you have your sanding materials out, remove any raised lettering. Remove the small center screw and save it in a safe place. After you've smoothed out all of the filler, sand the entire blaster with 400 grit sandpaper to remove the sheen. This will help you get better paint adhesion. In a well-ventilated area, apply your choice of primer. Be sure the primer you choose will adhere to plastic. Spray at the recommended distance in a back and forth motion. Keep the can moving to avoid puddles, runs, and drips. Priming will assist with pointing out any flaws on the blaster and give you better top coat adhesion. Let the primer cure for at least 24 hours, then apply a coat of flat black spray. Allow this coat to cure for 24 hours, and then apply a second coat of flat black spray. Let the second coat cure for 24 hours. Your patience will pay off in the end. Use painter's tape to mask around the grip. Give the grip a light sanding with 400 grit sandpaper, just enough to let our brown paint bite into the blaster. For the base coat of the grip, I will be using Tester's acrylic in burnt sienna. I thinned the paint with Windex to the consistency of milk. It can now be applied via brush or airbrush. You can use any medium brown spray paint or brush paint of your choice. I had access to an airbrush, so I chose this method to apply the paint. I'd like to give an Empire salute to Mike at Spiked Air Studio for his plastic to wood tutorial here on YouTube. I used his method on this blaster grip. After the burnt sienna had dried, I applied tester's acrylic and burnt umber with a toothbrush. I dabbed off excess on a paper towel and rubbed it in various areas. Once the burnt umber dried, I used a 1-inch paintbrush with some black acrylic paint to rub random streaks on the top of the grip. These 3 colors created a little depth and gave it a worn, grimy look. Next, we'll hit the muzzle with some metallic paint. Mask off the blaster with tape and paper towels so that only the muzzle is exposed. Use metallic spray applied from a spray can or airbrush. For spray paint, I recommend Rust-oluem metallic aluminum. I have used this on my Tuscan Raider neckpiece, and I'm very pleased with the results. If you prefer airbrushing, Vallejo makes nice acrylic metal colors, and All-Clad produces lacquer metallics. I will be using All-Clad in dark aluminum. Now that our prep work is behind us, it's time to apply the finishing touches. To prep for our gunmetal finish, we'll need to rub the black parts of the blaster down with ultra-fine steel wool. This will rough up the surface just enough for the graphite powder to dig in. Using a 3/4 inch flat brush, generously apply the graphite powder to all of the black areas of the blaster. Rub the graphite in with the brush. You will begin to see a nice gunmetal finish. Rub it until you are happy with the results. I'm a big fan of this gunmetal technique. I have applied it to my Princess Leia blaster, my T-21 blaster, and also my Tuscan sniper rifle scope. You'll need to seal the graphite with a clear finish, otherwise it will come off every time you handle the blaster. I covered the metallic painted muzzle with a mask, and I liberally applied Krylon Satin clear finish over the blaster body and grip. This will take the shine down a bit on the graphite. To get some of the luster back, wait about 1 minute after dusting the blaster with the clear satin and gently brush on some more graphite. It should stick to the wet satin. Try to avoid getting the graphite on the grip. To bring out the detail on the muzzle, we'll apply a wash of black artist watercolor. Put a small amount of black paint in a mixing cup, add a few drops of water, followed by a drop or 2 of dish soap. The soap is required to get the paint to flow and stick to the surface. Stir the mixture and apply it to the ridges. Let it dry for about 30 minutes, then lightly wipe off the excess with a damp paper towel. Try to avoid wiping the recessed areas. Leave that grimy paint in there. The next part is optional. To give the blaster a little more detail, mask off the centerpiece and scope holder. Spray these pieces flat black. To mask curved areas, use small pieces of tape cut into small strips. It may be tedious, but you'll be rewarded for your hard work. Allow the flat black to cure for 24 hours. Leave the masks intact and break out some Tester's metallic silver paint. Dab some on the brush and remove most of the excess paint on the brush so that only a little bit remains. Gently dry brush over the edges of the black paint. This will simulate wear and help the flat black look a bit metallic. Remove the masks so that you can see that beautiful work of art. Keep the silver paint handy. Carefully dry brush the ridges on the front of the blaster. To bring out the edges on the gunmetal finish, Carefully apply silver paint with the edge of a toothpick. Here's another optional step. To show a little more wear on the muzzle, apply some Tamiya Weathering Master. This will give it a sooty appearance. We're almost done, hang in there. Now we all know that this prop is a single piece of plastic. We are trying to create the illusion that it is made up of multiple parts. Here's the last time you'll need your paintbrush. Get some Pledge Future floor wax and carefully brush it on the scope. Future is very forgiving and self-levels. It will give your scope a semi-gloss appearance. After I finished painting and weathering, I noticed that the scope looked a little odd without glass on the ends. Using a compass, I drew 2 circles on an old 1mm plastic sign from Home Depot. One circle was drawn with a 10.5mm radius, and another with a 14mm radius. With the center point marked from the compass, I drilled out a hole in the center and widened it with a Dremel sanding drum. I stayed about 3mm away from the outer edge. I then used Lexan scissors to cut out the 2 rings. I applied some packing tape over black cardstock paper and then glued the 2 rings to the paper with E6000 adhesive. After a 24-hour drying time, I cut around the rings. To get a rough estimate on how much to trim off of the front scope ring, I put a piece of painter's tape over the front of the scope and marked the outer edge with a pencil. I put the marked tape on top of the small ring, aligning the edges, and cut along the bottom line. We made it. Our last step is to secure the front and rear scope rings with adhesive.